Right, let's dive straight into this. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really terrifying internet phenomenon surrounding what looks like a totally innocent, wildly popular toy. I mean, if you've been anywhere online recently, you've probably seen the Labubu doll. But beneath that cute exterior and the fluffy fur, there is a very dark, deeply unsettling story unfolding all over the globe. We're going to look at the data, the eyewitness accounts, and some genuinely terrifying case studies to uncover exactly why people are suddenly so terrified of this specific toy.
So are Labubu dolls secretly cursed? And look, we aren't just talking about, creepy vibes here. We are talking about global rumors and actually reported cases linking these specific dolls to sudden job losses, unexplainable severe illnesses, physical bite marks just appearing on owners overnight, and honestly, in the most extreme cases, even death. This is absolutely not just an isolated spooky story, it's practically a global panic. Let's start by looking at the case study that really set this whole investigation into motion.
Maylin's Golden Limited Edition, the beginning of the nightmare.
The immediate, and I mean absolutely undeniable shift in our subject's behavior is just terrifying. So Maylin, a young woman living in Shanghai, was known by literally all accounts as incredibly sweet. She had actually moved to the city to support her mom and sister after her father passed away. She worked in a toy shop, absolutely loved animals, especially her dog Bao, and was just generally known for her kind demeanor. But the very day she brings home a limited edition golden Labubu doll with this wide, toothy smile, everything changes. Like a flip switches. She is suddenly overcome by this uncontrollable rage. On her very first shift after bringing the doll home, she uncharacteristically explodes, screams at a customer for absolutely no reason, and gets fired on the spot.
Now, crucially, there were warnings. You know how animals are often highly perceptive to things that we just ignore? Well, Bao the dog normally loved Maylin's doll collection, but the second this golden Labubu entered the house, his reaction was intensely aggressive. He barked, he growled, and the very next morning he literally grabbed Maylin's jeans in his teeth, trying to physically drag her toward the shelf to warn her about the doll. Tragically, Maylin ignored this desperate warning, locked Bao in the bathroom, and went to work, which, as we just saw, ended in a total disaster. Rage and terrifying nightmares, the haunting escalates. Okay. So this is where the psychological horror starts to physically manifest. That night, after being fired and coming home in tears, Maylin goes to sleep early. What followed was a violently vivid nightmare. She dreamt of an entity in her room. And actually, scratch that, not a doll, but a demon. It had a rotting, dark red body. It had these horrifyingly sharp teeth, abnormally long, razor-sharp nails, and it let out this deafening, terrifying laugh as it lunged forward to strangle her.
So Maylin screams in her dream and wakes up in a cold sweat. But the nightmare wasn't over. No way. She wakes up to find the golden Labubu doll sitting directly on her chest. Now remember, she had explicitly placed this doll on a shelf all the way across the room before going to bed. Yet here it was, inexplicably resting right on her chest. And to her absolute horror, that cute, toothy smile, it seemed to have stretched even wider.
The tragic fate of Bao. A desperate defense against the unknown.
Let's just map out the events of this night, because it shows how rapidly the whole situation deteriorated. At 11 p.m., Maylin first hears this unexplained laughter in her dark bedroom, but she kind of just dismisses it. By 2 a.m., the red demon attacks in her nightmare. At 2:05 a.m., she wakes up screaming with the doll in her chest. And then, at 2:10 a.m., her faithful dog Bao just rushes into the room. Reacting to the threat, Bao grabs the doll in his teeth and violently tears it to shreds. Believing the threat is finally neutralized, a totally relieved but exhausted Maylin throws the destroyed pieces into the dustbin and goes back to sleep. Talk about a completely false sense of security.
The physical aftermath the morning after was seriously alarming. Maylin wakes up with a severe, splitting headache. But more terrifyingly, her face and hands are entirely covered in these small, red rashes that perfectly resemble tiny bite marks. And the absolute most chilling detail of all, Bao is missing. She calls for him, searches the living room, the kitchen, the hallways, just complete silence.
So Maylin goes into the bathroom to splash some water on her face, which leads us to this impossible question. She looks in the mirror and sees the horrifying red demon from her nightmare standing right behind her shoulder, laughing. She violently spins around, but the demon isn't there. Instead, sitting perfectly upright on the bathroom shelf is the golden Labubu doll, the exact same doll that Bao had torn to shreds just hours earlier. It was completely repaired, and its smile had warped into something purely malicious.
Maylin is absolutely frantic at this point. She runs out of the house screaming for Bao. Finding nothing, she runs back into the apartment, and guess what? The geography of the haunting has shifted again. The doll is no longer in the bathroom. It has moved to the kitchen sink, and now its tiny hands and wide teeth are stained a deep, dark red.
This is the really gruesome climax of our case study. Malin looks beneath the kitchen sink and makes a truly heartbreaking discovery. Bao is dead. The loyal dog who literally tried to protect her was found torn apart, covered in blood, seemingly having been brutally attacked by whatever entity was inhabiting that doll.
The inescapable curse, connecting to the global panic.
Finally realizing the doll is the source of the evil, Malin goes online and discovers she isn't the only one experiencing this. Horrified by the global reports, she attempts to destroy the curse once and for all. Desperate, terrified, and seeking literally any way out, she takes extreme measures. Step 1. She takes the Labubu doll and burns it completely in a fire. Step 2. She meticulously collects every single particle of ash into a glass jar and seals it super tight. Step 3. She takes that sealed jar and throws it deep into a nearby rushing river. She calls her sister, crying, saying she is finally safe.
But the curse was inescapable. The very next morning, Malin is found dead in her home, and resting peacefully right beside her lifeless body, the fully restored golden Labubu doll. The ashes in the river meant absolutely nothing, and worse still, a friend from her toy shop, who is totally unaware of the horrific events, sees the doll, thinks it's cute, and takes it home. The cycle just simply continues.
The demon Pazuzu theory, uncovering the why. Which brings us to the biggest question of this explainer. Why are Labubu dolls haunting owners? What exactly makes these specific toys such a perfect vessel for this happening all across the globe?
Well, the prevailing theory emerging from online investigators points to this entity right here, Pazuzu, an ancient, highly malevolent demon from mythology. But why Labubu dolls, right? The theory suggests that it's the design itself. The wide, toothy grins and distinct, eerie features act as perfect physical vessels. They're essentially dark beacons, making it incredibly easy for this ancient entity to anchor itself into the physical world. The red demon from Malin's nightmare actually aligns flawlessly with historical descriptions of this possessing force, suggesting the dolls themselves are practically inviting it in.
And the real-world consequences of this theory are frankly staggering. I mean, this isn't just internet folklore anymore. There are worldwide reports of mysterious bites perfectly matching the doll's teeth, sudden strings of severe bad luck, and complete financial ruin. It has actually gotten so severe that the dolls have been officially banned by authorities in several countries. We even have documented reports of priests actively being called in to conduct exorcisms specifically on these little plastic toys.
Which leaves us right here. Is the Labubu doll really hiding a demon, or is this simply a case of internet rumors spiraling completely out of control into mass hysteria? Well, when you look at the tragic timeline of Malin and Bao, the unexplained bite marks, and the sheer volume of global panic, it's really hard to entirely dismiss. So the next time you see a cute, trendy toy with a slightly too wide smile sitting on a store shelf, you kind of have to ask yourself, what exactly are you inviting into your home? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and stay curious out there.